Cool. So we're going to go to announcements. We're going to talk about what we're doing today. We were supposed to watch this episode of Turn. I forgot the. Should have capitalized that. I forgot the DVD at home, so I'm just going to forget about that for now. And we're going to do this. So you need to complete these fill in the blank notes. I'm not going to be a stickler for grading fill in the blank notes at this point because I understand we're having some issues with that. So just click on that, make sure you can know where the blanks are, and we'll go from there. How long is this PowerPoint? It's not long. Okay. And it's just understanding criminal and civil law. So nothing too bad. Hang on a second. Oh yes. We need to do that. All right. Well, that should have given you enough time to get out the notes if you haven't done that already. I was reading over something. I want to make sure we were on track with what we wanted to do. Cool. So we eventually are going to backtrack because I need to do something that I didn't do that I want to do because it just kind of came to me. So we're going to eventually do that, and that might be towards the end of the week. I might just add an announcement, or it might just be next week, and we just go back and look at something. But it will be important for what we're looking at today. So it's kind of like a overcompassing thing. So I couldn't have really done it earlier anyway. So let's go ahead and start. So we're going over understanding criminal and civil laws. So the elements of a crime. So a criminal act is an act that is punishable, that is a punishable offense against society. Elements of a criminal act. Whether you are aware of your duty to do or not to do a specific thing, whether you performed an act or omission on violation of that duty, whether or not you had criminal intent. So it doesn't matter sometimes if you meant to do something or not. You could still be charged with a crime because you just weren't thinking or you weren't paying attention. You should have been. But it will change what your punishment is or the classification of your crime. So a required state of mind. So determining if the defendant intended to commit the act and intended to do evil. And sometimes things do happen. There's just a mistake, and most of the time no one's charged with it. Um, you know, Hunting, for instance, is a good example. Um, Tons of people in the country go hunting every year. And I don't know the statistics, but a good amount of people do get injured in hunting accidents. Someone accidentally gets shot, or something isn't done correctly. Most of the time, unless it was just complete, you weren't doing what you were supposed to. Those don't really end up being any kind of charges, unless there's some kind of proof that you definitely didn't do something you were supposed to. Um, Same thing with um, car accidents. If someone's running and they've just kind of lost their mind, or who knows, whatever it may be, and they run out into traffic and you have no ability to stop, you're not going to get charged with murder, regardless of what kind of murder they want to charge you with. They just can't, because it's not your fault. You can't control some things. You can only control what you do. Duty is everyone's duty to know the law and conform their conduct to the law. It's very important that you understand you can't just say, well, I didn't know the law. The only times you can kind of get away with this, and it's very rare, even in those instances, is let's say you're from North Carolina, you drive into Virginia or South Carolina, and there's a little area you're in and you don't know exactly what the speed limit is, but you're trying your best to follow it. You probably could get away with that. No one's probably going to write you a ticket for that. But, it's very important that we have that in law, because you wouldn't want people to be able to get out of, situations. Well, I didn't know it was okay to not murder my neighbor. So again, it's your job to understand the law, follow the law, all those things. Um, and go from there. So violation of duty, the specific conduct that violates the statute. All right, so basic criminal classifications. So, felony punishable by confinement for more than a year in a state prison or by a fine more than 1,000 or both. A misdemeanor is a less serious crime that is usually punishable in a local jail for less than 1 year or by a fine or both. And then an infraction is a non-criminal violation of law, not punishable by imprisonment. So that's your parking tickets, your speeding, within reason, and different kind of, it's usually more traffic violations than anything else, or maybe like a noise complaint, things like that. You're not going to jail, and you're not getting fined a whole lot of money. It might just be a small fine, or it could even just be, a warning, don't do it again. All right. So here are the different types of crimes. We're going to go through a lot here pretty quickly. So just try to keep up and pay attention. Make sure you're completing those blanks and get those turned in. So murder is the intentional killing of another person. First degree murder is willful, deliberate, and premeditated killing of another person, either directly or through another felonious act. Second degree murder is an inherently dangerous act or a mission done in such a reckless and wanton manner without regard for human life. And then voluntary manslaughter is the killing of another person with malice or intent. So the voluntary means you did. Manslaughter may be used a lot of times for an accidental death. But when you put voluntary in front of it, that's what makes it malice or intent. Then robbery is the wrongful taking of property from another person by threat or the actual use of force, violence, or a weapon. One thing I want to go over real quick. I talked about it last semester. I was going to talk about it again this semester just because I try to keep things, related to what's going on in the world. So a good example, and I followed this with my class, was the George Floyd incident that happened last year. Well, yeah, it is last year technically now. I'm not getting into the politics of it. I'm not getting into the debate of it. All I want to talk about, though, is something very interesting, is where they decided to charge the officers with. And honestly, y'all, I haven't followed much of it since then. I can't remember all of what went on, and if everything's finished. I don't think everything's completely finished with it. But just to point out something interesting, my whole class, we talked about it before they had charged him. And we talked about what would we have charged him with if we were, in that situation. And some people, you have your opinions. Oh, he shouldn't be charged. Oh, he should be charged with first degree. Something important here is lawyers and attorneys. They're not going to use, they're not going to try to use their emotions when they're thinking of this. They're trying to think of what is the best way to make sure whoever deserves a punishment gets their punishment. And if we are going to charge him, what are we going to charge him with? From what I've taught in my time of following court cases, I really thought second degree murder would have been the smart thing to charge him with, because you have a better chance of actually getting that charge if you're the person who's prosecuting him, whereas first degree murder was going to be hard to prove. And that's just based off of, you can even see it in movies. There's a lot of times that the family will be a little concerned because, oh, we're not going for first degree murder. Well, why not? Well, the reason is because we can get them on second degree murder. And this is where you start thinking more like an attorney, is by having that thought process of, oh, okay, so we're doing this because there's a better chance he's going to get charged. If you do first degree murder, you start really putting it up into speculation, where second degree murder, there's no speculation. We can see an inherently dangerous act or omission. You can prove that. Were they being dangerous? Were they, omitting something they were supposed to do? And then done in such a reckless and wanton manner without regards to human life. So I'm not getting into the judgment on him, but if you're in a courtroom, it's a lot easier to prove that than it is for the willful, deliberate, premeditated. That's another important thing, premeditated. How you're going to prove that in a court of law, I don't know, because it's going to be very difficult to say that he went there from earlier in the day. He knew he was going to go kill George Floyd. And that's where I was shocked that when they did move it up to first degree murder, and I felt like we were more listening to the outcry, or, and rightfully so, there should be outcry. Again, I'm trying not to be political about it, guys. I'm just trying to keep you up to date with what's going on and why, I saw a well-known public defender, and he was a prosecutor at one time too, and he talked about how he was confused why they put it to first degree murder. That's, again, I'm just telling you the facts. I'm not giving you any kind of thing on what should be what. But I did want to talk to you about that because I try to, it's part of the job of your teacher in this class, is to try to keep you up to date with things that are going on. Because for instance, I talked about the Supreme Court stuff. We talked about that. We talked about that at the beginning of the semester, actually. So I'm going to continue to try and give you things up to date, but I really don't want to get political because that's not my job. So if you ever think I've said something too much, just let me know and I'll apologize for it. But again, I just wanted to tell you, this is a very interesting thing, and it helps. Usually, when I bring in things that are going on in the world, it helps because y'all can remember these facts a little bit better. But back to it, like I said, it's really hard to get premeditated murder. For instance, that's why it's hard sometimes when we see these cases. What's his name? I lost his name. But when someone is maybe cheating on a spouse and they come home, they find out, and they murder the people in the house. It's hard, is that first degree? Is that, did they is that some type of voluntary manslaughter? Again, it's hard to prove premeditated. First degree murder is hard to prove, and it should be based off of the way we categorize murder. So not to stay on this slide too long, but it is very interesting. And if you start looking at murder cases, it gets very interesting to look at. Another cool court thing you can watch. I wanted to watch it in class. I had to go back and watch it to see if it was appropriate. It wasn't because the language was atrocious. Is the Aaron Hernandez thing on Netflix? If y'all have seen that, let's see. Has any of the three of you seen it? Anybody? You can give me a check or say yes.
I have not.
Oh, I can't hear you at all. Let me turn the volume up on my computer. Okay, come on. Did you say you did, Ryan, or no?
No, I have not.
You have not. Anybody else see it? You can give me a check if you saw an X if you didn't.
No, I didn't see it.
Okay. Well, and with y'all being football players, you might be kind of interested in it because it goes over a lot of different things. I'm assuming y'all have heard about it at least, but the interesting thing is you can see some of the stuff we're talking about in there, that what they're trying to charge him with. They're going over. It's hard as a prosecutor to know what to charge people with, and obviously, I'm not an expert because if I was, then I would probably be a lawyer and not working as a business teacher. But that's the main thing is I want to get across is, there's some really cool stuff you can see out there. Not cool that someone got murdered, but interesting things to see how they charge people and, what goes through the mindset of the prosecutor. It's not all, well, he murdered someone, it's a first degree murder. They may lessen the degree just so they can make sure they put him away. So specific crimes. So rape, sex offense, so statutory rape. If the defendant engages in a sexual act with another person who is 13, 14, or 15 years old, and the defendant is at least 6 years older than the person. Date rape is victim is unconscious or physical, unable to resist an act of sexual act or communicate unwillingness to submit to an act of vaginal intercourse or a sexual act. So again, basic stuff here for the most part. Just remember statutory rape has to deal with the age, and date rape is usually, that instance where someone is being raped against their will, if that makes sense. Statutory rape doesn't have to be against their will. It can be that they were the 13, 14, 15, whatever it may be, was consensual, but, that's not allowed. So, because again, we start talking about capacity, and we'll talk about that. We talked about that already, or we haven't talked about that. We will talk about that next week. But capacity is a big deal, and it's the ability for you to make decisions on your own, basically. So, and you don't have that at a certain age. And we're going to have a debate about that as well, about the age you have. When are you able to make decisions, basically? So, just remember the statutory is the age. Date rape is, against your will kind of deal. So then we go on to assault. So simple assault is an attempt to commit a battery against another person. So, in school and all the time when someone acts like they're going to hit you or someone has punched you jokingly and you yell out assault, that's technically not correct because it's the attempt to commit battery. Battery is the unlawful touching or forceful striking. So you actually should yell out battery of another person using a hand, a weapon, or other instrument. Aggravated assault is a person that inflicts serious injury upon another person or uses a deadly weapon. Kidnapping is the unlawful removal or restraint of a person against his or her will. Doesn't have to be a kid. So I don't know why we call it kidnapping, but it is what it is. Domestic violence. So this is interesting. NC domestic violence laws, domestic victim defined. current or former spouse, related as parent and children, current or former household member, person who are in a dating relationship. Obviously, the last two, they can get kind of in a gray area, especially that last one, what is a dating relationship? And then, of course, the current and former household. So roommates, if they got into a fight, it would technically be domestic violence, and that's what it would be considered as in the court of law. Continuing on with crimes, criminal law process requirements, domestic violence. So means the commission of one or more of the following acts. So attempting to cause bodily injury or intentionally causing bodily injury, placing the aggravated party or a member of the aggravated party's family or household in fear of imminent serious bodily injury or continued harassment. So, it could even not be domestic violence, doesn't have to be someone is hitting someone, but it's the fear that someone is going to get violent. So that also is included in domestic violence, which it needs to be because, you don't want to stop at, well, we can't do anything until, someone hits somebody. If you're in fear, then it's technically considered domestic violence. But again, it's a gray area because where does that start and where does that begin? So the civil law process requirements, the court from specific facts shown may enter an order as it deems necessary to protect the plaintiffs if there is a danger of act of domestic violence against them from a defendant. Continuing on with crime, so burglary, any person who breaks or enters any building with intent to commit any felony or larceny therein. Burglary, just remember you're breaking in. B&B, burglary, breaking in. Larceny occurs where the value of the property or goods is not more than $1,000. So again, remember that larceny, you don't have to necessarily breaking in. That would be like someone, for instance, stealing from the company they work for, or they just happen to see something on the road and they steal it, like a car or something. But remember, occurs where the value of the property or good is not more than $1,000. So the car would have to be pretty cheap, a pretty cheap car. But anyway, vandalism, willful or malicious damage to property, arson's willfully setting fire or causing to be burned any building or structure of any type. And then embezzlement is fraudulently or knowingly and willfully misapplying or converting any item of monetary value to one's own person. So again, that's more similar to the example I just gave of stealing something from a company you work for. Usually though, it's not just, there is just stealing from the cash register, but a lot of times they might like change things so they get more money. Maybe they're, acting like their commission was higher than it was, so they get more money that way. So that's a way that embezzlement can happen as well. So again, fraud using deception to obtain money or property. Those are like your classic, I'm an Arabian prince and I am needing to transfer my millions of dollars into your bank account, so give me your bank information, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure y'all have heard of those before. Money laundering, illegal obtained money is put into or through a business to hide its origin. So it's basically, that was we saw a lot of that in the 30s, 40s, 50s with the mafia. They'd have, fronts that were businesses. A good example is like they had flower shops and stuff like that. I think that's in The Godfather mainly though. But anyway, stuff like that. And they would, have something going on behind the closed doors that was illegal. Forgery is placing a false signature on a check or another document to deceive or deprive someone of their property. Treason is giving aid or comfort to the enemies of the United States. Perjury, when a person lies during a court or administrative process. Something interesting, and I believe this one, then this is my opinion solely. It doesn't mean I don't have Facebook, but have y'all ever had a situation, I don't know, are y'all on Facebook? Hit the little green check if you're on Facebook. No one's on Facebook. Okay, yeah, it is getting kind of for the elderly, I guess. But anyway, I'm sure y'all have heard about, Facebook is listening to you or whatever. It'll be interesting if that ever comes out because Zuckerberg, the owner of Facebook and whatever, he said in front of a court hearing that Facebook didn't listen to you, that they definitely did not listen to you, that, and we get back into the stuff with Donald Trump where Twitter is taking down his accounts and all these different accounts are removing him. And technically they legally can do that because you don't have to have a Twitter. You don't have to have Facebook. But what's interesting to me is they can get away with doing things like that, censoring if they want. The interesting thing, though, is he said in that courtroom that they don't, and I'm pretty sure everyone who's ever had any type of social media can think back to an instance where it was probably listening to what you said. And of course, they look at your search history, things like that. So if you look up, for instance, me and Miss Haddock are trying to buy kayak racks for our car so we can take our kayaks. So I'm going to get ads for kayak racks now. I've looked that up. I've gone to Amazon and looked that up. That makes sense. For instance, though, where was I? I want to say I was on my way to Taco Bell. I didn't have it in GPS or anything because I knew where Taco Bell is. There's nothing I had on Taco Bell besides I was saying, I wonder what the special is for Taco Bell. I said that to the person in the car. I looked at Facebook on the way there, and there was an ad for Taco Bell. That one's, there's no way that they weren't listening at that point. So, but anyway, so he would technically, if they can prove at some point that, Facebook was listening, especially when he said they were not, then he could get charged with perjury. Obstruction of justice, that was a long story just to tell you about perjury, but, I think it helps. Obstruction of justice, when a person does something that hinders the court to move forward in a case, so that would be hiding evidence, destroying evidence, things like that. Bribery is giving money to property to a public official and for a favor. And then contempt of court is when a person ignores a court order or shows a lack of respect for the court. You'll hear that in the movies, I'll hold you in contempt of court, for not, respecting the court, basically. All right, so a tort is a private wrong committed by one person. This is civil law, so this is a little bit different. So this would be me cutting down my tree and you're my neighbor and I destroy your fence. Elements of a tort is duty, obligation to use a reasonable standard of care to prevent injury to others. So it was my job not to cut down my tree and destroy your fence. Breach is a break or breach duty to another person. So that was the breach. The causation, the breach of duty caused the injury. So your fence was destroyed because of my tree falling. And then proximate cause, reasonable, foreseeable that a breach of duty will result in an injury. Now, if my, and this is where insurance usually comes in handy. If a hurricane comes and knocks over my tree and takes out your fence, well, your insurance or my insurance are going to kind of work together and cover that. And you're not going to be able to really take me to court because there was an approximate cause. But if I'm out there physically cutting my tree down and it destroys your fence, then I should have known that was a possibility, and I should have probably taken better care to make sure that tree didn't land on your fence. Vicarious liability, a person is liable for the torts of another. So I paid someone to come cut down my tree, and he did that. Well, probably I'm going to get the money from him to pay you, but it is still on me because I paid the guy to come cut down the tree. Actual harm, so injury caused, a property destroyed, or loss of monetary value. So if I cut down my tree and it just, you think that it made your fence fall down even though the tree went the other way, well, that's not actual harm. And again, it has to be something that's really bothering you. If I'm cutting my grass and you try to say that I'm doing a noise complaint, well, as long as it's at a normal time, if it's at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or on a Saturday at 2 o'clock, you can't really take me to court over that. Now, if I was cutting my grass at 2 o'clock in the morning, you might have something there, but it just depends. So, civil law. So assault, when one person intentionally puts another in reasonable fear of an offensive or harmful bodily contact. So again, this is kind of like it happened. The police weren't there, so they didn't charge you. So now you have to take it to civil court. But it would still go to criminal. It just depends. So that's why we go through these again. Battery, we talked about that. False imprisonment, that's basically holding someone against their will. For instance, stores can't really do this unless they have valid proof that you tried to steal something. That's usually a ethical question that comes up in classes like this. Defamation, a false statement that injures a person's reputation or good name. It's weird. I feel like that's going to happen a lot here in the future, just based off of everything going on in the country. I feel like there's going to be a lot of defamation cases that could come up. Donald Trump against the media, and then some groups, saying that other media groups are being defamation towards them. It's very interesting. It'd be very interesting to see how that goes, but and they may not pursue it. A lot of defamation cases don't get pursued, but there's a lot of stuff that could happen. Again, I'm not trying to take sides. I'm just trying to give you a example of what could happen. Not saying that there should be a defamation case, not saying that there has been defamation. I'm just saying there's definitely a precedent for this, so someone could do that. Invasion of privacy, uninvited intrusion into one's personal relationships and activities. Trespass to land, so entry onto the property of another without consent. Conversion is when property is stolen, destroyed, or used in a manner that is inconsistent with an owner's rights. Excuse me, I got something in my throat. Okay, back to it. So interference with contracts. So if a third party encourages a breach in any way, then the third party may be liable in tort. This is where you could get some interesting stuff because technically, and we'll talk about this later, being engaged is a contract. If a male gives a female a engagement ring and she says yes, they're in a contract to get married. And if one of those people cheats in that, they would technically, the person who is cheating with the engaged person would be interfering with that contract. So fraud occurs when there is an intentional misrepresentation of an existing important fact that is a lie, which causes the victim to give up rights or something of value. Negligence, a tort that results when a person carelessly injures another. It is an accidental tort and requires no intent. Again, same thing. My tree falls on someone's fence. That's my fault. It's negligence. I didn't mean to do it, but it happens. Elements of negligence: the defendant owed the plaintiff a duty of care. So again, I should have been more careful when I was cutting down my tree. The defendant breached that duty by being careless. The tree fell. The defendant's carelessness was proximate cause of harm. The tree destroyed the fence. Again, the plaintiff was really hurt by the defendant's carelessness. Well, now he has to pay for new parts to a fence, or take some time out of his schedule to fix the fence, things like that. Defense to negligence. So contributory negligence. The defendant can show that the victim did something that helped cause him or her to her own injuries. I don't know how that would work with my tree incidents unless, maybe the guy next door hit his tree with a lawnmower. That was causing him to have to cut it down. Comparative negligence, when the carelessness of each party is compared to other parties' carelessness. And then assumption of risk, when the plaintiff knew of the risk involved and still took the chance, assumed risk of being injured. A good example of this, and I always like it because I'm a big hockey fan. As I said on the first day of class, I play hockey. When you go to a hockey game, if you get hit by a puck, you can't sue the rink. You can't sue the team. When you go, you assume the risk that you're going to possibly you could get hit by a puck. Does it happen? Usually, no. But there are signs that say beware of flying pucks. The same thing happens when you go to a pool. I worked at a pool from the time I graduated here in 2013 to about summer before last was about the first summer I didn't work there. But I wasn't a lifeguard. I was just a pool attendant. I basically made sure people coming in were supposed to be there. But the thing that was up all over that pool was you swim at your own risk. If you drown, you can't sue the pool because you knew the risk that you were taking. Now, can you technically you can't sign away your right to sue technically. The problem is that most likely it doesn't see the courtroom though. Does that make sense? Basically, I could sue if I get hit by a puck at a hockey game, but it probably the judge will dismiss the case. You can always possibly sue. Maybe the glass got taken down. Maybe the glass was shattered and they didn't replace it, and you got hit with a puck. Then you can sue. They don't ever want to be able to take the right away from the person who it could harm. For instance, if someone drowns at the pool I was working at because we had tons of stuff at the bottom of the pool and it caused someone to trip and hit their head or something like that, the pool wasn't clean or something on our end wasn't right, then they can still sue. You don't want to be able to take that away from the people who are possibly getting injured. Well, the sign says I can't sue, so I can't sue even though it's your fault. That's basically the thought process behind you can't really sign away or give your rights away to sue. Civil remedies, so court injunctions, so court order that prevents a party from performing a specific act and may be temporary or permanent. A good example where I was talking about cutting the grass. Let's say I go cut my grass at 2 o'clock in the morning, my neighbor sues me, or maybe we just go to mediation or something. The court injunction could just be, you can't cut your grass at 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. You have this certain amount of time to cut your grass in the day. And I don't have to pay anything. There's nothing there. It's just causing this issue to be resolved. Damages, a payment recovered in court by a person who has suffered an injury. So that would be more of the, the tree hitting the fence. I'm paying them for the injury. And remember something else with these questions. Injury doesn't necessarily mean a physical injury. It could be just that they injured your property. You have to pay money. And in legal terms, an injury basically means you lost something. Maybe it was a physical injury, or maybe it was just, something you had got destroyed. All right, last slide, alternative dispute resolution. So I just was talking about this, resolving a disagreement outside the usual court system. A lot of court cases get decided this way. So mediation, when parties to a dispute invite a mediator to help solve the problem. The advantage is final decision remains in the hands of the parties. So basically, if y'all watch The Office, there's a scene where Dwight and Angela have a contract to basically have a baby together. They're supposed to have a kid together. And they have a mediator come in, and they end up solving the problem themselves. But the mediator isn't even happy with the decision they make, but he was there to help them talk through their issues. But again, the main point of mediation is there's someone there to help you solve the problem, but it remains in the hands of the people who brought in the mediator. Whereas arbitration is giving the power to settle their dispute to a third party. So this would be, bringing someone in to just, solve the problem. It's up to you. It's out of our hands. So advantage often results in a fair solution because the decision is in the hands of an objective third party. So basically, this is like a sudden death thing. This is going to be decided. And mediation's more like almost, let's just put it, in sports terms, mediation's almost like baseball. It can keep going. It can be tied. Whereas arbitration, it's going to end. It may take a little while to end, but it's going to end, and someone's going to make a decision. And it might not be to the liking of either party, but it's going to be a decision. And it's probably going to be a fair decision because they don't have any ties to the case, hopefully. So that's basically it. Sorry if I took long on some slides, but I do want to go through some things. Hopefully, I try to bring in some things that are relevant to what's going on in our country, what's going on in our society. I hope no one's offended. If you are offended, you can email me and tell me, and I will tell you that I'm very sorry. You can yell it out at me right now if you're offended. And you go to the first two slides. Yep, I got you. Please turn it in today if you can. If you can't get it in, then that's okay too. So there's the first slide. Criminal Act, elements. I don't know which one you're looking for. Just type good when you're done, Ryan, and I'll go to the second slide for you. What do we turn it in? Okay. Carter, you're going to turn it in Canvas right where those notes are. Where I clicked on the notes and everything. Does that make sense? It just shows 1.2. Oh, it's because it's not published. Well, how did y'all get it then? I'm really confused. That's weird. That's my bad. I didn't know it was unpublished. Sorry about that. It shouldn't take you long to go back through that. Like I said, it's only 18 slides. So just make sure you get that. I'm sorry. I wish I would have said something earlier. But you did get it through the announcements, didn't you? That's right. Good job, Mr. Haddock. Okay, well, at least I did that. I did have it in the announcements. So yeah, then you're just going to turn it in the modules then. So no issues there. Okay, I thought I really blew it, but apparently I didn't. Okay, good. So yeah, you're just going to submit them right here then. No worries. All righty. Well, I am done for the day. So y'all are welcome to hang around, but there's not even any assignments today. Yeah, we're not even going to worry about assignments today. We're going to do activity 2 tomorrow together, and then you will complete activity 1, 3, and 4 on your own. Like I said, towards the end of the week, I'm actually going to add something. And there's a really fun activity on Thursday, and we'll go over it on Friday. So, yeah, we're doing pretty good. All right. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you later. Oh, there's only one person left. Cool.